In the 1840s, Karl Marx was a fugitive. Forced out of Paris, chased from Brussels, and expelled from Cologne, he spent the decade outrunning press censors and police. European monarchs and Prussian authorities actively monitored his movements, viewing his political writings as a severe and immediate threat to the established order. To understand why governments feared him, look at the world he was observing. The Industrial Revolution had arrived on the continent, bringing immense wealth to factory owners, but Marx saw it as a poisoned chalice. Agricultural workers were being forced into sprawling, smog-choked cities. Adult men worked in mines and mills for up to 70 hours a week. Children as young as 8 worked 60 hours. When these laborers returned home, it was to cramped tenements regularly ravaged by cholera. Marx looked past mere policy reforms. He sought the total demolition of the industrial machine itself. To do that, he needed an ally. Friedrich Engels was a paradox. The wealthy son of a German textile businessman who owned the very factories Marx despised. Yet he became Marx's primary financial lifeline and his greatest intellectual collaborator. As popular revolts erupted across Europe in early 1848, the two men rushed to articulate their vision. Working under an ultimatum from a radical political group in London, Marx drafted their manifesto in a 6-week rush fueled by wine and cigars. Their core thesis in the Communist Manifesto argued all human history is class struggle. Society fractured into the capital-owning bourgeoisie and the laboring proletariat. They demanded abolishing private property. Factories and land would be communally owned, theoretically ensuring an equal share of wealth. The pamphlet concluded with a command: "Workers of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains." It was a fiery call to arms that became a global political turning point. But the revolutions of 1848 collapsed under violent state crackdowns. By 1849, the Prussian government forced Marx out of his homeland, sending him into a permanent exile in London. In the city's slums, a bitter irony took hold. The intellectual giant fighting for the material well-being of the working class lived in suffocating poverty. He moved frequently, renting 2-room homes under fake names to avoid political interference. His health deteriorated from liver disease and respiratory issues, while his family relied on constant charity from Engels to survive. The emotional toll of this squalor was devastating. Of the 7 children born to Karl and his wife Jenny, 4 died in infancy and childhood. The image of the distant ideological god dissolves in the face of a grieving father whose personal tragedies sharpened his singular obsession. He channeled that grief into his work. Day after day, Marx retreated to the reading rooms of the British Museum. Battling insomnia and severe illness, he consumed volumes of economic data, filling hundreds of pages with frantic notes. The result of this labor was Das Kapital, a multi-volume critique that eventually spanned over 1 million words. This animation illustrates the book's core concept, historical materialism. Marx argued that the evolution of technology and economic class friction, not the actions of kings or nation-states, are the true engines of historical change. Marx forged Das Kapital into a meticulously constructed weapon designed to identify the fatal structural flaws in the capitalist engine. He had synthesized his rage into a comprehensive economic blueprint, setting a trap for the industrial order that would outlive him. Marx never saw his utopian dream realized. Outside of brief, bloody flashes of insurrection like the 1871 Paris Commune, where radical workers briefly seized the French capital, his revolutions failed to materialize. By the time he died in 1883, he was almost penniless. He was buried in London with barely a dozen people standing by his grave. Yet his obscure writings gathered momentum over the following decades, erupting into an ideological force that engulfed the 20th century. In 1917, the Bolsheviks used his ideology to overthrow the Tsars, forging the Soviet Union out of the ashes of the Russian Empire. From there, the movement spread across Asia, driving the creation of Maoist China. But the practical application of Marx's ideas collided with a brutal reality. Eliminating private property required massive authoritarian state force. These regimes conducted state terror and engineered artificial famines that killed tens of millions of people. It leaves us with a chilling historical paradox. Was Karl Marx a well-meaning prophet of the working class, or the unwitting architect of humanity's greatest nightmares? Regardless of the atrocities committed in his name, Marx's diagnosis of class warfare stripped the focus away from kings and borders, forcing a new lens onto the economic friction driving every society. The fear of his proposed revolutions directly accelerated the implementation of child labor laws, trade unions, and the workplace safety standards we take for granted today. Whether viewed as a savior or a villain, Marx achieved his defining ethos. The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it.